All right, Tom Mulcair. Not sure where we want to start,
Can
but
we start with
yeah.
the ethics thing? That's what I'm most curious about.
Well, I was going to start with
what do
the
you want to
CAT
start with?
convention.
Sure, start with that, and then we'll move on to the ethics
So
thing.
98.61, Tom, that's the
Yes.
approval rating from delegates at the CAT convention, which of course reminded us of, the song that I'm sure James Meny brought this up, and he's bang on. I should have thought of this because, I sort of tie these things into songs anyway. Do you remember a song by Keith called 98.6?
Of course.
Oh, you do? Tom's really
Yeah.
good at this, by the way. We've done this before. That's this.
Hey, 98.6, it's good to have you back again. Oh, hey, 98.6, your loving is the medicine that saved me.
Oh, I love. Okay, we don't need that part. So, Tom, 98.61 approval rating, probably the best of any politician. What in Quebec history? That's Kim Jong-un numbers.
Well, yeah, I'm always reminded of Enver Hoxha, the former president of Albania. The only problem they had one year, they couldn't come. Somebody had lost the results of the election before it was held, so it took them a while to come up with other numbers. 98.61, of course, it couldn't have been 98.6 because it would have been too obvious because Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon got 98.5. They couldn't just say 98.6. It would have been everybody was saying, "Oh, come on, you just invented that number to get more than him." So it's 98.61. It sounds so much more credible and official when you add that extra 0.01 to it. It was amazing. We had joked about this. I do French TV on Friday night, and we were doing a panel show, and we were saying, the one thing they have in their mind is the 98.5 of Buzz Saint-Pierre Plamondon, and they're going to beat it. And of course, amazingly, that's exactly what he did. He just edged him out.
What do you know?
What a close contest, yeah.
So what I
Very
wanted...
credible, too.
Yeah, totally. When we were talking about how this allows them to do whatever they want now, like that stopped them before this.
What's news about that?
Yeah, like appointing your friends to the plum positions that you would like. So we had Simon-Jolin Barrette appointing a friend, and now Éric Girard has appointed his friend to the Loto-Québec Board of Directors. And we were kind of wondering about I was wondering about the ethics behind this because Aaron kind of thinks it's on the up and up because they don't actually select the person who gets the job.
Well, to that because Francois Legault was asked about that, and he referred to a commission, Tom, I forgot what it's called, the Bachchan Commission, something like that, or you know what I'm... Bastarache, exactly. And he said this.
I think we cannot refuse competent candidates because they know the minister. Again, those people have been chosen for their competencies by an independent committee.
An independent committee, that's what he's referring to.
Well,
Does
that's
that
where
make
the
sense?
whole thing falls apart, though. Because what Simon-Jolin Barrette has been doing, he had to admit over the weekend that on 5 separate occasions, that independent committee that does exist, and it is something put in the wake of the Bastarache Commission, where we learned that there was some sketchy appointments being made and how you got an appointment as a judge, and these are lifelong appointments. And I'd right away open a little parenthesis to say there's a big difference between that, naming somebody for life to the bench, and naming one of your buddies to sit on the board of Loto-Québec, because next time there's a renewal and they're only there for a few years, you can always replace them. So, and by the way, I think that Éric Girard's buddy, who went through the same sort of studies as him, is probably somebody who's got everything they need to be one of the many board members of Loto-Québec. Maybe we don't need that many crown corporations in Quebec, but that's another discussion. But getting back to Simon-Jolin Barrette, our justice minister, on 5 separate occasions, he has canceled the list put together by this expert independent panel. So the one that is really, really gumming up the works right now, and I can tell you right now, this one ain't going away, is Sept-Îles. So if you know the area, Sept-Îles, Lower North Shore, and big town, got some major industries there, and embedded essentially in on either side, there's a very large First Nations reserve called Washat Mak Maliutinam, and it's got the 2 sides. And interestingly enough, it doesn't exist anywhere like this in the province. Like the one major shopping center there is actually on the territory of the First Nation, but everybody comes in and works that way. I mean, the communities are intermingled. There are huge social problems there right now. There was a big spread on it in the press 2 weekends ago. Huge social problems. If you talk to anybody from that area, and I have friends and acquaintances up there and people that I've worked with, it's a huge, huge difficulty with drugs in the community. So you need somebody who knows the area well, understands those social issues, and so they had that expert committee. The panel came up with 3 recommendations of the 11 people who had applied to become that judge. Simon-Jolin Barrette threw them all out did a new competition, a new concours, and said that the ones who had applied the first time were not allowed to apply again. And lo and behold, the best person with the deepest knowledge of the community in Sept-Îles was somebody from Longueuil, who happens to be about the same age as Simon Jolin Barrette and who's connected, to the world of the judiciary here. He was, from what I understand, he was a lawyer at the CIS, or the CIUS, the local health board, and now he's been named a judge in matters of pénal et criminel, so penal and criminal matters in Sept-Îles. I don't think that decision makes any sense whatsoever. And this whole idea that François Legault is still trying to use that excuse, saying, oh, we've got these independent commissions and they come up with these, that's obviously not true. Because Jolin Barrette, when he doesn't like the names that are given to him, and until he can get to somebody that he does like, then he's just going to throw out the names that he's been given by that independent and credible panel.
This what you just said about that if you've previously applied, you're not allowed to apply again. How can they're just making up the rules as they go?
Well, I mean, this is the thing. On the weekend, Simon Jolin Barrette came up with an absolute spectacular one. He said, well, I didn't have to tell anybody that I was in a conflict of interest. If you want to change the regulation to say that you have to declare that you're in a conflict of interest, no. If you're a minister and you're sitting in cabinet and you're about to do something where you're in a conflict of interest, let's say you're sitting there and you're a lawyer and one of the companies that used to be a client of your law firm, they're coming under, for a grant or a subsidy or a contract, you got to say, oops, sorry, I shouldn't touch this. I'm going to skip out on this one. I'll let you guys continue the conversation. I'm in a potential conflict and I don't want to embarrass myself or anybody else. That's what you have to do. But here he says, well, no, I'm the justice minister, so I get to, when I want, throw out the list, and when I want, I can just say, well, the best person I've been able to find happens to be a really close personal friend who was the one who celebrated my marriage not so long ago. And don't you dare say anything about that, because everything's on the up and up because of these great committees that we put together that we can ignore when it suits our purpose. I mean, the whole thing stinks as far as I'm concerned.
Wow. Okay. All right, let me move on. We talked about a provincial by-election that we have them now announced, at least one here, of course. That's the one in NDG Westman, a couple more across the country. These are coming up next month. When we were talking earlier, and Natasha, this is in your writing.
Yeah, well, it's being held tonight at the church.
No, that's the election. I'm saying the actual vote itself.
But I'm going to say we don't know for sure. It's
who the
assumed that it's going to be
right.
Anna Gainey, but we don't know that for sure. The vote's being held this evening.
But the bigger question here, Tom, do you think there's political backlash here, whoever the candidate happens to be for the Liberals, of people looking at this saying, you know what, I'm not real happy with what the federal Liberals have done, and that candidate will pay the price?
Yeah, but then there'd have to be somebody else saying, elect me. I'm close to you. I understand you. I'm part of this community. I'm running as an independent, or I'm running for another party, and don't give the Liberals, don't give them your vote. But what happens in by-elections is this. The turnout is so low. If you get 25% in this by-election, it'll be almost a miracle. 30 is like sort of the high watermark in a by-election. So what's going to happen is the party that has the most organization on the ground, which will be the Liberals, and people just have a habit of voting a certain way. So the English-speaking community, as a matter of habit, likes to vote Liberals. We broke through with the NDP in one election in 2011 with the Orange Wave. But I mean, that's sort of the exception that confirms the rule. And so what's going to happen is, unless there is somebody who structures this discussion and says, look, Bill C-13 is really problematic. It embeds Bill 101 and Bill 96. It makes it difficult to plead the case before the courts once you've done that federally. And by the way, that was Mark Garneau's argument, and he was right. And there's only been one person in the whole Liberal caucus to stand up and vote against this thing, and it was Anthony Housefather, much to his credit. And he's probably going to pay a price for it, too. So I think that Trudeau's just expecting that the election is just sort of an event that takes place to confirm his choice of candidate, and of course his choice is Anna Gainey. But it would be interesting to see if anybody in the community has the wherewithal to get something together and say, no, this time around, we want to do something, we want to express our views that we don't accept, that the community is being treated this badly, the changes that were brought in by Bill 96 to remove the rights of the English-speaking community to have, equality of English and French before the courts. Legault keeps going after the English school boards with Bill 40, and now this newest iteration of their plan with Bernard Drainville. People just say, look, that's enough. Putting that into federal legislation was wrong, and we're going to vote against it. But I don't see who that person's going to be. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised and find out, that there's a group of people who put some money together and have found a top-flight candidate who are going to try to run at this thing. But so far, crickets.
We're out of time. I just want to go back to what you just said. You said Anthony Housefather, you believe, will pay a political price. What kind of price? What's going to happen here in your estimation?
Well, he's a parliamentary secretary, and there are there are perks like travel and things like that. So I mean, when the whip says this is a whipped vote, you have no choice. You're going out there and voting the same way the government's telling you to vote, which, by the way, Trudeau swore he would not do. He said, you're going to go to Ottawa to represent your riding. You're not going to go to your riding to represent Ottawa. Well, of course, that turned out to be a nose stretcher as well. So I think that Housefather is probably going to pay a price. They'll remove some of his privileges. Will they dare go after him, his standing as a parliamentary secretary? They could.
Okay, we shall see. That's interesting. Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Talk to you tomorrow.